Just fixing the camera angle. There we go. For those of you who are watching after this is no longer live, we're going to be reading in Treasure Island again, chapter 14 this time. Yeah, we're just going to do the normal thing where I wait around for people to join live for a couple minutes. Just a little heads up, I'm not going to be streaming tomorrow. That doesn't really matter to y'all who aren't live, but whatever. I'm telling you anyway, I'm not going to be streaming tomorrow because I've got something planned that, takes priority. I forgot about this flashlight. I just randomly found it. Oh, batteries are dead. Alright. Well, while I'm waiting, I am going to read a couple, just 2 entries, I think, from the dictionary, maybe 3. I've got my 2,129-page Webster's New Universal Unabridged Dictionary. And I started this yesterday, and it was actually kind of interesting, so I'm going to do it again. So while I'm waiting, I'm just going to read something from here. So let's go ahead and turn. We will be reading from Treasure Island in just a little bit. Alright, before I start this, let me go ahead and start the poll, because I forgot to start that last time. Let's see. I'm going to mute this while I'm doing this. Hello, sorry about that. I had muted because I was busy with the typing and didn't really want to talk while I was doing that. So I just put up a poll right there. You can vote on that if you'd like. In a little bit, I'm going to be reading from Treasure Island, but before I start doing that, I left the dictionary over here just a second. I've been reading just a couple things out of the dictionary before I start, just to fill the time while I'm waiting for live viewers. You might not find it nearly as interesting as I do, but that's okay. You can just stick around until I get to reading, I guess. I usually wait till around the 5-minute mark. So while I'm waiting for that, let's go ahead and go down to where I was yesterday. So A, which is a noun, an object shaped like an A. In chemistry, the symbol for argon. In education, a grade first in quality, as an A in history. In music, the 6th tone or note in the scale of C major, or the 1st in the scale of A minor. A key, string, etc., producing this tone, the scale having A as the keynote, and then A, shaped like A, adjective, indefinite article, an abbreviation of Anglo-Saxon, an, or ain, 1, Used before words beginning with the consonant sound of a sounded H, as in table, a home, or a table, a home, a unicorn. See, an. All right, that's all I'm going to read from the dictionary at the moment. Hello. I've got people saying hello. ADMXX and Anarchist Girl 7704. Emily Storytime. Hello. Alright, that's all I'm going to read from the dictionary for now. And it looks like y'all are voting a little bit. Ooh, it's 50-50. We got to get more people voting then. So if you haven't voted in the poll, go ahead and do that. Because at the moment it's tied. Alright, so what I'm doing is I am reading from Treasure Island, and it's about 5 minutes in, so I guess that's about time to start. So let's go ahead and rip the covers off. This poor book has taken a beating over the years, and so the covers came off. I'm gonna take my bookmark out as well. I started writing a book, and I haven't finished it, and I ripped the page out. First page right there I'm using as a bookmark. You love Treasure Island? I like Treasure Island too. It's a pretty good book. I've read it, I think, twice now. And I'm reading through my third time. You know what? I did it again, didn't I? Oh, I'm lucky. Last time I had a little trouble because I forgot to fill my water. This time I do have my water. I just forgot to put it on the table. And it is filled, so that's good. Let's go ahead and take a drink of that so I don't have any problems. Do I have any published books? And if I do, am I planning on making more? I do not have a published book yet, but I have one that I'm in the middle of publishing. It should be available on Amazon by February at the latest. And I do have plans on several more. I'm in the middle of writing maybe 10 or 20 books, so I've got a lot of things going on. Am I going to make another one? Another book? Yeah, I am in the middle. What is the book called? So, this is my handwritten copy of the book. It's called Muplion Pertigop Flopincob, a Novel of Nonsense. So, it's just a bunch of gibberish that I made up for the title, just to make it a little more interesting. I'm not going to give away too many details of the book, because that would spoil it for y'all, but it's kind of like an adventure. Did I get a haircut? Yes, I did. I got a haircut around lunchtime today. It got long enough that I needed to cut it. But anyway, it's kind of an adventure book, and it's also got some nonsensical things in it and some really neat humor, I think. So excited for the book. I'm excited for it too. I'm really eager to get it started. Or published, rather. And you're back like you said you would be. Yeah. Yeah, you're back. Thanks. I appreciate that. Ooh, we've got 5 votes, and so it looks like we've got more votes for 5 weeks in a balloon. Well, if you haven't voted on the poll, y'all can vote on that while I'm reading. It's almost 10 minutes in, so I'm going to go ahead and start reading. Let's see how many pages in Chapter 14. Not very many, as usual. We've got 5 pages. Alrighty. So let's go ahead and start reading Chapter 14, which is called The First Blow. I was so pleased at having given the slip to Long John that I began to enjoy myself and look around me with some interest on the strange land that I was in. I had crossed a marshy tract full of willows, bulrushes, and odd, outlandish, swampy trees. and I had now come out upon the skirts of an open piece of undulating, sandy country, about a mile long, dotted with a few pines and a great number of contorted trees, not unlike the oak in growth, but pale in the foliage, like willows. Excuse me. On the far side of the open... What? On the far side of the open stood one of the hills. I feel like that's supposed to say opening, but it says open. On the far side of the open stood one of the hills, with two quaint, craggy peaks shining vividly in the sun. I now felt for the first time the joy of exploration. The isle was uninhabited. My shipmates I had left behind, and nothing lived in front of me but dumb brutes and fowl. I turned hither and thither among the trees. Here and there were flowering plants, unknown to me, and here and there I saw snakes, and one raised his head from a ledge of rock and hissed at me with a noise not unlike the spinning of a top. Little did I suppose that he was a deadly enemy, and that the noise was the famous rattle. Then I came to a long thicket of these oak-like trees, live or evergreen oaks, I heard afterward they should be called, which grew low along the sand like brambles, the boughs curiously twisted, the foliage compact like thatch. The thicket stretched down from the top of one of the sandy knolls, spreading and growing taller as it went, until it reached the margin of the broad, reedy fen, excuse me, through which the nearest of the little rivers soaked its way into the anchorage. The marsh was steaming in the strong sun, and the outline of the spyglass trembled through the haze. All at once there began to go a sort of bustle among the bulrushes. A wild duck flew up with a quack. Another followed. And soon, over the whole surface of the marsh, a great cloud of birds hung screaming and circling in the air. I judged at once that some of my shipmates must be drawing near, along the borders of the fen. Nor was I deceived, for soon I heard the very distant and low tones of a human voice, which, as I continued to give ear, grew steadily louder and nearer. This put me in a great fear, as I crawled under cover of the nearest live oak and squatted there, hearkening, as silent as a mouse. Another voice answered, and then the first voice, which I now recognized to be Silver's, once more took up the story and ran on for a long while in a stream, only now and again interrupted by the other. By the sound, they must have been talking earnestly and almost fiercely, but no distinct word came to my hearing. At last, the speakers seemed to have paused, and perhaps to have sat down, for not only did they cease to draw any nearer, but also the birds themselves began to grow more quiet and to settle again to their places in the swamp. And now I began to feel that I was neglecting my business. Since I had been so foolhardy as to come ashore with these desperadoes, the least I could do was to overhear them at their councils. My plain and obvious duty was to draw as close as I could manage, under the favorable ambush of the crouching trees. I could tell the direction of the speakers pretty exactly, not only by the sound of their voices, but also by the behavior of the few birds that still hung in alarm over the above the heads of the intruders. Crawling on all fours, I made steadily, but slowly, toward them, till at last, raising my head to an aperture among the leaves, I could see clear down into a little green dell beside the marsh, closely set about with trees, where Long John Silver and one of the crew stood face to face in conversation. The sun beat full upon them. Silver had thrown his hat beside him on the ground, and his great, smooth, blond face, all shining with heat, was lifted to the other man's in a kind of appeal. "Mate," he was saying, "it's because I thinks gold dust of you. Gold dust. And you may lay to that. If I hadn't took you like pitch, do you think I'd been here a-warning you? All's up. You can't make nor mend. It's to save your neck that I'm a-speaking. And if one of the wild uns knew it, I had to turn a page while he was speaking in a weird way, so that's kind of difficult to follow. And if one of the Wildens knew where I'd be, where'd I be, Tom? Now tell me, where'd I be? Silver, said the other man, and I observed he was not only red in the face, but also spoke as hoarse as a crow, and his voice shook, too, like a taut rope. Silver, said he, you're old, and you're honest, or has the name for it, and you've money, too, which lots of sailors hasn't, and you're brave, or I mistook. And will you tell me you'll go and let yourself be led away with that kind of mess of swabs? Not you. As sure as God sees me, I'll sooner lose my hand. If I turn again my duty. And then he was interrupted by a noise. I had found one of the honest hands, and now at the same moment came news of another. Far away out in the marsh there arose, all of a sudden, a sound like the cry of anger, then another on the back of it, and then one horrid, long-drawn scream. The rocks of the spyglass re-echoed it a score of times. The whole troop of marsh birds rose again, darkening heaven, with a simultaneous whir. And, long after that death yell was still ringing in my brain, silence had re-established its empire, and only the rustle of the redescending birds and the boom of the distant surges disturbed the languor of the afternoon. Tom had leapt at the sound, like a horse at the spur, but Silver had not winked an eye. He stood where he was, resting lightly on his crutch, watching his companion like a snake about to spring. "John," said the sailor, stretching out his hand. "Hands off!" cried Silver, leaping back a yard, as it seemed to me, with the speed and security of a trained gymnast. "Hands off, if you like, John Silver," said the other. "It's a black conscience that can make you feared of me. But, in heaven's name, tell me, what was that?" "That," returned Silver, smiling away, but warier than ever, his eye a mere pinpoint in his big face, but gleaming like a crumb of glass. "That? Oh, I reckon that'll be Allen." At this, poor Tom flashed out like a hero. "Allen!" he cried. "Then rest his soul for a true seaman. And as for you, John Silver, long you've been a mate of mine, but you're a mate of mine no more. If I die like a dog, I'll die in my duty. You've killed Allen, have you? Kill me too, if you can. But I defies you." And with that, this brave fellow turned his back directly on the cook, and set off walking for the beach. But he was not destined to go far. With a cry, John seized the branch of a tree, whipped the crutch from his armpit, and sent that uncouth missile hurtling through the air. It struck poor Tom, point foremost and with stunning violence, right between the shoulders in the middle of his back. His hands flew up, he gave a sort of gasp and fell. And whether he was injured much or little, none could ever tell. Like enough, to judge from the sound, his back was broken on the spot, but he had no time given him to recover. Silver, agile as a monkey, even without leg or crutch, was on top of him the next moment, and had twice buried his knife up to the hilt in that defenseless body. From my place of ambush, I could hear him pant aloud as he struck the blows. I do not rightly know if it was... I do not rightly know what it is to faint, but I do know that for the next little while the whole world swam before me in a whirling mist. Silver and the birds and the tall spyglass hilltop going round and topsy-turvy before my eyes, and all manner of bells ringing, and distant voices shouting in my ear. When I came again to myself, the monster had pulled himself together. His crutch was under his arm, his hat upon his head. Just before him, Tom lay motionless upon the sward, but the murderer minded him not a whit, cleansing his blood-stained knife the while upon a wisp of grass. Everything else was unchanged. The sun still shining mercilessly on the steaming marsh and the tall pinnacle of the mountain. And I could scarce persuade myself that murder had actually been done and a human life, cruelly cut short a moment since, before my eyes. But now John put his hand into his pocket, brought out a whistle, and blew upon it several modulated blasts that rang far across the heated air. I could not tell, of course, the meaning of the signal, but it instantly awoke my fears. More men would be coming. I might be discovered. They had already slain 2 of the honest people. After Tom and Alan, might not I come next? Instantly, I began to extricate myself and crawl back again, with what speed and silence I could manage, to the more open portion of the wood. As I did so, I could hear hails coming and going between the old buccaneer and his comrades, and this sound of danger lent me wings. As soon as I was clear of the thicket, I ran as I never ran before, scarce minding the direction of my flight, so long as it led me from the murderers, and as I ran, fear grew and grew upon me, until it turned into a kind of frenzy. Indeed, could anyone be more entirely lost than I? When the gun fired, how should I dare to go down to the boats amongst those fiends, still smoking from their crime? Would not the first of them who saw me wring my neck like a snipe's? Would not my absence itself be an evidence to them of my alarm, and therefore of my fatal knowledge? It was all over, I thought. Goodbye to the Hispaniola, goodbye to the squire, the doctor, the captain. There was nothing left for me but death by starvation or death by the mutineers' hands. All this while, as I say, I was still running, and, without taking any notice, I had drawn near to the foot of the hill with the 2 peaks, and had got into a part of the island where the live oaks grew more widely apart, and seemed more like forest trees in their bearing and dimensions. Mingled with these were a few scattered pines, some 50, some nearer 70 feet high. The air, too, smelled fresher than down beside the marsh. And here a fresh alarm brought me to a standstill with a thumping heart. And that is the end of chapter 14. And I said the other day that chapter 12, I think it was, is my favorite chapter, but actually, this next chapter, chapter 15, is actually my favorite. When will I go live again, and when? So I like to go live every night at 10:15. But I'm not going to be able to go live tomorrow because I've got plans. So I think Saturday is when I'm going to go live again. But when I do not have plans, I like to try to go live every night around 10:15. You're welcome. All right. Well, that is the end of today's stream just about. I'm going to look at this right here. It looks like 5 weeks in a balloon. 1 again. So it looks like after Treasure Island, I'm going to be reading 5 weeks in a balloon. End poll. There we go. I've never read that one before, but it seems like an interesting one. Alrighty. Well, thanks for sticking around with me to the end, for those of you who are live, and for those of you who are not live and watching this after it's gone on, thanks for watching all the way to the end. You know, the people who are watching live didn't necessarily watch from the very beginning, but those of you who are watching after this is no longer live, you've watched all the way through, and I appreciate that. If you are not subscribed, I would ask that you consider it. I really do appreciate it when you subscribe, and I hope to see you all next time I read. So with that, y'all have a good night. God bless.